Right, let me close my window so you don't hear the crackheads shouting out for more crack. I'll.
I didn't know you lived near Michael Gove. Okay.
I live near Boris.
Oh, fuck.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another Sunday Roast, and I hope you're all very well and hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. We are here with two wonderful guests once again. We have Random Scottish History, Jenny, and we have Michael Lambert, the anti-Brexiteer. For people, and of course my wonderful host, Alex from Political X. Maybe we can get each of you to introduce yourselves very quickly for people who may be new to the channel. Jenny, would you like to go first?
I'm Jenny. I run randomscottishhistory.com, also known as rsh.scot. I have about 7 publications out now, some podcasts, 100-odd YouTube videos out there. Just getting by, giving out the Scottish history as I find it interesting in the hopes that maybe someone else might find it of interest. So, I'm occasionally on other channels such as yourselves, and Independence Live gives me a platform as well for monthly videos, but that came to an end this month. So
Well, we hope to see more of you. Michael, can you tell us about yourself for new subscribers?
My name is Michael Lambert, and I'm the old bloke who rants on YouTube, and I'm a toffee eater, and that's about it, really.
I'm Max.
My name is Max. I run the Robespierre channel. I talk about Brexit, British politics, but in particular Brexit. And I'm trying to expand a little bit into other areas as well. But I'll keep you posted on that. And Alex, can you tell us about yourself?
Hi, I'm Alex, Political X. I run a YouTube channel as well and co-host this with Max. This is a lot of fun. Shall we go straight into it, Max?
Yeah. What's our first topic?
I was going to ask you what's our first topic.
Well, I think we'll start with Brexit if everyone's okay with that. So I was just talking. I was just looking through what's happening this week, and Nigel Farage is a little bit upset with the Labour Party because he feels that the Labour Party want to take Britain back into the EU, and that Brexit will be undone. But others are saying that Brexit hasn't been done yet. So some of his ex-members of the Brexit Party. If we look at what's happening in Northern Ireland as well, there seems to be some sort of movement towards resolving the conflict over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is really interesting because you have Brexit hardman Steve Baker, who's basically telling the DUP to shut up on a daily basis. Because the DUP want to get rid of the protocol. They would prefer to have a hard border on the island of Ireland, but the British government are not going to do that. I don't know if we've already covered it with British Volt.
The idea of a battery factory in the north of England, when all the car factories are going away. We saw today that what the car production is the worst for 66 years. I mean, the car factories are going. And what's the point of having a battery factory up there when you've got to get your batteries to Europe where all the factories are? Nobody's going to put up with that nonsense. I mean, just the whole idea was crazy. If we had our own car industry, that's another matter. But I think this whole thing about going on and on. I mean, Jeremy Hunt said it, and now Shap said it at Davos, this thing about creating our own Silicon Valley. I mean, it's like, as I'm always saying, it's like me saying I'm going to solve all my problems by winning the lottery. I mean, make it happen. It's just pie in the sky, utter nonsense, really. And I think
Michael, can I ask you, because it seems they've moved on to the next unicorn, maybe, which is biotech. So I've heard, I think it was maybe Rishi Sunak talking about biotech is the next big thing, but that's probably going to be pretty much the same thing, but because you're going to need to rely on foreign workers and that's not so easy, is it?
But the crazy thing is they keep coming out with biotech and green technologies and all these things we're going to have to do for the future, and that's where we become global Britain and world leaders. They don't seem to think that just possibly other countries are also thinking the same thing or have been thinking it for years and already set up and are much better equipped to succeed than we are. It's just so deluded, the whole thing. obviously it's right to go for green technology. It's right to go for all these latest modern sciences, but to say we're going to start and we're going to become world leaders, I mean, it's just nonsense. But I think people just they listen to it. People believe it. They hear, oh, yes, oh great, we're going to be Silicon Valley. We'll become. Oh, Grant Shapps mentioned Microsoft and Amazon and Apple, and said, why can't we do that? Why don't these countries set up here? I mean,
because we don't invest in our education.
Well, I mean, you can come up with 100 reasons why.
I'm gonna smash both parties. Like, I read the education manifesto from Labour. They still want 30 kids in the class. You want to improve IQ. There's several things you can do that are really easy, and they won't do any of them. And the first thing you do is drop the class sizes to 19 per class. That is statistically shown you will improve learning. End of.
You then need a lot more teachers.
Yeah, but that's their problem. They don't want to invest. So this whole science thing came out of Cummings. He was the one that was saying, this is what we need to do. This is how you make your money. This is how you have a stable economy. It's like, right, so make sure that you've got the right class sizes. Science, you can slightly argue because there are limitations inside a science classroom because of health and safety in some of the sciences, not in all. But in some of the classes, you're meant to have no more than 20 students in the class. So maybe that could happen. But you're still going to need the teachers to do it. And they're dropping like flies, like all public services. They're just quitting and going, I'd rather not have the stress and go and disappear elsewhere or onto YouTube.
Well, Max and I have a Polish friend, Galadriana, who's also she wanted to be a teacher when she came over here from Poland, and she's saying that she's struggling. They hear the accent and they immediately just start dismissing her.
Wow, that's terrible.
And she's in London, so they're not even entertaining those who are coming over with a view to being teachers, by the sounds of things.
I'll just finish up this one thing. Primary schools are also included in that, but then there's no science classes within primary, so it's 30 kids a class. You will have a significant defect on the education system from the start. I've got a question. I promise I'll bring you both in, but Jenny, have you ever had that with your accent, where you've gone south and people have gone, I don't understand what you're saying?
I had actually a really interesting experience as a child. We were down in England on a caravan holiday, and being children, I think I must have been about maybe 10 or 11 or something, you just start talking with other children, So I'm on the swings and this couple of boys come over, and it was me and my brother, and these two brothers come over and they just start chatting with us, and they're like, why do you talk funny? Like, what were you, like, I can't, they're conveying to us that they were finding it hard to make out what we were saying, and we were finding that strange because we could understand them fine. And they're like, where are you from? And we said, Scotland. And they looked at us deadpan serious and went, no, you don't. We definitely come from Scotland. And they're like, no, you don't. No, my dad says Scotland doesn't exist.
Would that be what you call an existential crisis?
It left me as a 10-year-old very baffled. I was suddenly lost for words. My mind started skipping. I'm just like, right, wait, what? Am I not from Scotland? No, it does exist. What? So I had to go back and tell my parents that we'd had this encounter, like, with this. That was possibly my first experience of anti-Scottish sentiment to quite a strange extent, really. Yeah.
Have you had that, Max?
No, not well. I don't know in which context I could actually have that. Like when I visited the UK, or
when you visited the UK. I mean, I guess I assume when you're speaking in Italian that you'll have.
Yeah, no. I've never had any negative experiences. Even when I'm stopped by the police, to check my driving license and stuff, they're like, "Oh, you're from Ireland. All right, that's really cool." But no, I've never had any negative. Or when I was learning Italian and I'd start to speak in broken Italian, they just reply to me in English. So it's like, just speak to us in English, please. It's easier that way. But nothing. No, I'm really fortunate. I've never experienced anything negative.
I get called a twat. They're called a twat sometimes.
By who?
For my accent. What?
But who called you that?
Nobody. I'm really joking.
No.
But there's just one other thing before we move on to the next topic I just wanted to raise. We're about education. I don't know if anyone saw those in the Times a couple of days ago, maybe it was on Wednesday, that universities are being told not to train up more doctors. And the reason for that is because of the cost. They don't want to spend the money because it costs about £160,000 to train up a doctor. So the government have actually instructed universities, no, don't. Which flies in the face of this whole idea of we're going to train up our own. We don't want to bring people in from abroad. So how can you be telling universities, no, don't train up too many doctors?
I think the plan is to bring them in from Nigeria and from Bangladesh and from India and wherever.
But that's not going to sit well with the, your Brexit voter who voted for taking back control or whatever that meant.
Yeah. Get rid of those awful Germans and Italians and French and replace them people from Africa and India, and they're not going to be at all happy.
I can't understand their thinking behind that. You want homegrown talent.
Money.
Every country wants homegrown talent. It's something that a government should be able to be proud of.
Yes.
Is the amount of homegrown talent.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be trying to curtail that for any reason. Westminster are just so crazy baffling to me. Just the last couple of years, the amount of decisions they've made just fly in the face of rationality so many times.
I think actually you can say that they don't know what they're doing. They really do not what they've got into such a mess, particularly because of Brexit. They honestly don't know how to get out of it, and they know the economy is collapsing, and tax revenues are going to just go down and down, and they don't know what to do. They haven't got a way out.
There's actually quite an interesting configuration here. So, and proving the point that they don't know what they're doing, but also I think there is an ethos here. I think they are about saving money. And if they can get them in without training, and then save the cost, it doesn't matter. But there's also an element. Maybe it'll enrage the Brexiteers so much they'll start hating the NHS. I could see that being part of the theory. And possible. I mean, you're right. I don't think they do have a plan. I think if they do, it's a pretty evil one, which is basically liberalize everything, deregulate everything, let the markets just run everything. That has been pretty consistent.
The only reason I've been able to come up with for the most of what they've been doing recently, especially, the only thing I can think of is that they know Labour's the next government that's going to come in. They know that after the next year, Labour's going to come in, and it's almost as if they're trying to fuck up things so badly and leave Labour such a mess that they're going to seem just as incompetent as the Tories have been. But I don't know how they don't understand that people are going to see that it's Tory incompetency and corruption that's led Labour to the point where they're going to have a struggle to bring us back from the brink.
I think I disagree with you on that. Not that I disagree with you, but I think that's a positive way of looking at it, that people will go, look at what the Conservatives done. People have very short memories.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you within 6 months people were saying, let's get the Tories back in. Remember the good old times. Look at Boris Johnson.
It is kind of surprising how little the opposition, Labour and the SNP, have used all the Tory mess-ups to their advantage. They could so easily be turning everything into neat little sound bites that are going to stick in people's minds as to just how bad the Tories have been, just how bad their lives have been messed up by them, just how the cost of living crisis and the fact that people are struggling is solely down to this one incompetent party. And neither of the parties have done this. Neither of them have made good use of the failings of the Tories. But that's literally their job. And they're both failing at that. The opposition are not... I know I still, and you'll not be surprised, I do feel like the SNP far more of an opposition to the Tories than the Labour Party. But even they're not going as far as they could do, not nearly as far as they could do, with the plethora of like nonsense that's come from the other side. They're just not using it to their advantage properly.
What would you like them to bring up?
Go 2 years back and then start at January and go, what went wrong in this month? February, what went wrong in this? What did they do in March? What did they do? And just take one thing from every single month and then just make little bullet points of it and turn it into your 4-word memes that the Tories love so much, you know? Because it seems to work for the Tories. Why would it not work for the SNP and Labour against the Tories? They're not using the sound bites, and they're not using the information in a way that works for them. Do you know what I mean? They can stand there at PM's questions and they can have that one moment of, oh, look, he didn't answer the question. But you're right.
I think
people are going to forget that.
I think they're not ruthless enough. The Tories are completely ruthless. Maybe the opposition parties need to be a bit more like that.
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. It's not as if they don't have the fodder to be able to use. You know, the Tories have given them on a plate and they're just not using it to their advantage at all.
PMQs has now become such a joke, hasn't it, really? It's just a sort of, does anybody take it seriously, really? But I think Starmer, I mean, he's missed so many open goals throughout his time. As Jenny was saying, time after time after time, there's an open goal and he'll miss it and he'll dance around it. And he's so polite and he can't criticize Brexit. And it's really quite astonishing, really, how.
I can understand that in politics there's a time for diplomacy, and it's probably most of the time, but there's also a time for just outing the other side for exactly who they are and what they've done. And I mean, if the SNP had used even half of what the Tories have given them, there would be far more than there is on side for. There wouldn't even be a question over if there was a referendum how we would vote. And yet there's still that question. The fact that the Tories in Westminster have any support at all left in Scotland shows that the SNP aren't using any of this to their benefit, you know? Because this should be an easy win. It shouldn't even be a question. And it is. And it's so weird.
Do you think your new leader is going to make much difference? He seems quite impressive.
Who's that? Stephen Clark?
Sorry, the new SNP.
I don't know him. I don't think he's had enough time to prove himself. I liked Ian Blackford, and honestly I would have liked to have seen maybe someone like Mary Black in the position as well. She has a nice way of whittling down a thing into nice concise sound bites.
Maybe she's too young. Maybe
I don't know Stephen Clark and his way of doing things enough to know whether he's going to be of much use either, but they certainly have plenty to work with, provided they actually do work with it, you know.
Can we segue into, we were just talking a little bit about health. Can we segue into what Sajid Javid has been talking about this week? Alex, what has Sajid Javid been proposing?
It's what we were talking about earlier with the liberalisation of everything. He wants to bring in charges. I don't like him personally. He deliberately ignored my 94-year-old grandma for 3 or 4 years. Kept writing into him and he never got back to her. So I've got a bit of a personal bug in my bonnet with that man and his office. They're very idle. And how you ignore a World War II vet, I don't understand when they're asking for help. It's pretty shocking stuff. But this is just, I mean, we've just got so much going on. I mean, it's interesting you were saying about all these different issues. You can't keep up. None of us can. You've got to do special videos to be able to keep up with all the crazy stuff. That's a plug for our specials, by the way. But he wants us to start paying money to go to the GP and to A&E. And it could be something 10, 20 quid. It's not really clear.
He was looking at Ireland with their £50 fees, weren't they?
He did cite Ireland, he did. Yeah. I do remember that now. Is it 50 quid to go and see the doctor and 50 quid to go to A&E?
I think it's €50 to see your GP in Ireland, and I don't think you get to go to A&E without a GP referral. I don't think you can just turn up to A&E. It's getting that way here anyway. The A&Es don't particularly like you turning up off your own back here either. If you're able to go you're better off either going through your GP or through NHS 24 referral. And to be honest, that cuts your waiting time down anyway, because by the time you arrive, they already know what you're there for. I mean, I'm just out of hospital there. I was admitted on Friday after calling NHS 24, and I'd call for some advice, and the outcome was, yeah, you have to get to A&E right now, and if there's any kind of decline in your symptoms en route, then you have to ask the driver to pull over and call an ambulance. And I'm like, it's not that serious. They're like, it's that serious. You have to go right now. So I went. Within 10 minutes of arriving, I was in triage. Now, you're usually in for triage and then back out in the waiting room for an amount of time before then being taken into a triage bed for further assessment. Before the triage was even done, a nurse was in to take me to a triage bed. And then within the next hour from that, I had a chest x-ray and a CT scan. And within another hour, I was in a ward bed up in the Royal Infirmary, the Jubilee building. The next day was lumbar punctures. Then I was transferred to a cardiac ward for the rest of my treatment, you know. And so everything was just boom, 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 just done, you know. There was very little waiting around whatsoever. It was absolutely brilliant. So if anyone felt like they were going to need A&E assessment, and I didn't, but if you feel like you do, then NHS 24 would probably be your easiest route to that.
I so thought you were going to plug the idea of getting on the train and going to Scotland, being quicker and getting treatment up in Scotland.
Have limited
I
capacity.
mean, I can't say it wouldn't be. I've seen some of the stats coming out. What was the recent one? Was like 27 hours waiting for a bed in like some of London's hospitals.
So it would be quicker.
I
we
think
actually got
I
to
think
the point where it would be quicker to take a trip
you
from
say
the south to
it would
Scotland?
be. You say it would. I mean, working for NHS 24, the Scottish and the English NHS is very separate. And I've had English people call me who aren't registered with Scottish GPs up here. And it does make for a fairly long process, because we have to then create a record for you, because technically, according to the NHS up here, you don't exist until we create a record for you in order for you to be seen.
Say you're on holiday though, couldn't you?
Well, yeah. Temporary residence, that happens all the time.
I'm not genuinely advocating this. I'm just pointing out the ridiculousness of the situation.
See, if you're in dire straits, I'm not saying it maybe wouldn't be worth your while looking at what's going on with the English NHS, honestly.
Can I ask what I know you were not like recording or anything. You had different things on your mind, but what did you notice when you went in? Was there a lot of overcrowding? Were there people on trolleys? It was like normal.
No. It was a Friday night I went in, so I was expecting it to be really busy, and people were just boom, boom, boom. It's constant, just being seen, let out. There wasn't overcrowding. I certainly didn't have to wait for a bed. I didn't see anyone waiting in corridors on wheelchairs or trolleys. The only time I saw that was in the kind of wee waiting area, but that was to be x-rayed. And there's always that, you know, there's always kind of like maybe a couple of beds and a couple of people in wheelchairs just waiting for x-rays. But no, there was none of that. I didn't see any hint of the overcrowding or the delays that you're seeing on the news. All of it. And that was like Glasgow's main hospital. That was Glasgow Royal Infirmary. So like dead city centre. And I was surprised, like, because it's, you watch the news and you just expect these things.
But this is also
very different up in Scotland.
This is also a big problem, because a lot of people are refusing to call 999 because they're afraid that they won't get an ambulance, or that when they arrive in hospital they won't get treatment.
Yeah.
Or they'll have to wait to be treated in the ambulance, which is a big problem.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just detrimental all round. I don't think the media is helping matters. I think the media are exacerbating things more than anything, because you're going to have the people that are going to avoid getting themselves treated on the basis that, oh, well, I'm not hanging around for 15 hours just to be seen. So they'll just put off their own treatment, and that could be dangerous. That could just lead to, especially if it's something like sepsis or something that can just kill you suddenly. Those people that are going to form like quite a large percentage of the unnecessary deaths these days. But then you're also going to have that breed of people that, the panic buyer. So there maybe isn't something immediately wrong with them, but they're like, oh well, I better get this sorted now then, since there's going to be a long wait, and they're creating a backlog in themselves, you know. So the media aren't helping matters at all.
What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yes, I'm just about to do a video on the NHS, because it seems to me it cannot carry on as it is. We simply can't afford it, and there's going to have to be some form of charging, or it'll be privatized. And I think charging is infinitely better. But it seems to me we've got an aging population and a shrinking economy. Well, where's the money going to come from? And healthcare is getting more and more expensive. We all know the equipment's expensive, drugs are expensive, and so on. People are people are retiring at 65 and living for another 20, 30 years. And they just aren't the taxpayers to keep it going. It seems to me absolutely inevitable. And I think probably both parties realize this, that there's going to have to be some charging system. Because otherwise, where does the money come from? More taxes? We've got the highest taxes we've ever had at the moment. I mean, how much more can you put taxes up? 27% of our expenditure is on health. I mean, how high can it go?
If they were to start taxing the highest paid as they should be taxed appropriately,
of course.
If they were to clamp down on the tax evasion and the money laundering and the offshore nonsense, then that might help fund the health service to a great extent. That might also help fund infrastructure and everything else.
Yes.
Around the country. But they refused to. I mean, part of Brexit was in order that they could continue the tax nonsense, because the EU were bringing in stronger laws against that. So why would they? Like, they're not doing what's necessary in order to bring money in, and it's not the working class that need to be paying for this. It's those who have made the money within the bosom of the UK and then are refusing to give back.
Like Mr. Zahawi.
Yes, exactly.
But I think their approach is, well, I don't need it, so I don't want to pay for it.
Exactly.
Or I don't need it, so if I need it, then I'll pay for it myself. They don't like the idea of taxation.
I do find it very difficult to understand how somebody can, especially somebody whose parents brought them to this country, but anyway, how somebody can make so much money and then think, let's see how I can figure out how not to contribute something, to pay a bit of tax back. Let's see how I can fiddle my taxes. Seems to be quite extraordinary. I mean, do they feel have they got
orders of wealth, and it's not wealth that they're going to be able to spend in their lifetime. No. They can't take it with them.
I think
they're selfish. It's just sheer selfishness. They're not willing to contribute to the society that's raised them, and it's just selfishness.
It's like I'm all right, Jack sort of attitude.
Yeah. But then that's so. I mean, wow, you've thrown tons out there, right? So we're not the highest in terms of tax per GDP. I think we're 20th or 30th, so there is more room. But there's also ways. I mean, the government. I'm calling them like yuppies. They're lazy hippies. Like, they just don't want to do any work, and they want everything just to sort of take care of itself, as if it will.
Who are you talking about?
The Tory government.
Oh, right.
They're like I'm trying to come up with a new term, but they're like economic hippies. They just want to have freedom of everything, and it'll fix itself, and you don't need to do anything. But instead of love and peace, it's like money and power.
But surely
war makes money.
Surely it's the opposite, Alex. They want just control. They want to control everything, don't they?
But that would be power, money and power. Yeah. But within that and the charge, so there is scope for charging. People are up for that. We saw that with the national insurance hike. As long as they thought that the money was going to the NHS, they were happy with it. But bear in mind, like, there was that Leave EU video that literally showed that everything was going to be better. I think the last thing I saw was that 10,000 EU nurses and doctors left the NHS, and it's all because of Brexit, and we've got shortages. I think, is it 50,000? Is it 50,000 nurses? I think.
Yes, 50,000 nurses.
Just nurses.
Yeah.
50,000 nurses, and we lost 10,000 medical staff because of Brexit. But then I've got a little quiz question. I'm going to throw you what they charge in the USA. How much do you think they charge in the USA for an inhaler? This is a system I think they want to bring.
GoFundMe for your inhaler, I would think.
Yes, you probably would.
$300.
Ooh, got a 300.
Michael?
I was going to say $10.
Dollars max.
I think I know the answer, but I'll say $600.
$250 for an inhaler in the States.
Can't they
How
buy
much for an X-ray?
Can't they buy one on Amazon?
No, I don't
think.
think.
Do some good sales if they were to get into the medical field. Like
An X-ray.
How much for an X-ray, max? How much for an X-ray?
I don't know, $1,000.
$2.5 grand.
$2.5 grand, Michael.
500.
$1,000 per X-ray.
Really?
How much? Last one for a liver transplant. You need to get a new liver. We've all been there.
You need a
50
new
grand.
house.
Jenny, how much for a
50
liver
grand.
transplant?
50,000.
50,000. Michael,
100,000.
Max,
I can't say the same as Michael, so I'll say 150.
it's $150,000.
Really?
So yeah, so I've got friends out there. I'll tell two stories. One car flipped over, their truck flipped over. They had no medical insurance because they weren't working. The ambulance turned up and they asked the ambulance driver to go away because they couldn't afford to pay to go to hospital, even though they're still trapped in a truck, flipped over.
It's
The other one
like
is-
$100 a mile or something like that, isn't it? Or $200 a mile.
If you come across someone in need, so like I had stumbled across a girl that was taking an epileptic fit in the middle of Glasgow, and she'd fallen and really hit her head, and I looked after her until the ambulance came. In America, in the same situation, you would have to sit with that person until they came around, and then you would have to ask them if it was all right that you called an ambulance for them. You're not supposed to just call an ambulance for someone that needs one because they might not be able to afford it.
Yeah. It depends on the state for that, but yeah, there's an assistance. There's
And
also
if the person, if they're unconscious,
Sometimes they even have a card, and so like you know how we get cards here that says that they're on certain.
do not
medication or
resuscitate, do not call
They
an
would-
ambulance.
They would have a card saying, like, please
Can't
don't
afford
call
it.
me an ambulance.
At age 79, Frank Cardile should be kicking back on a beach somewhere. But even though he's insured by Medicare, it doesn't cover all the costs of the drugs that he and his wife need.
Until I die. There's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, do you know how much? Okay, I'll throw one about Europe. So I checked in France, Sweden, Switzerland, and I think, don't quote me on it, I think Germany. How much would it cost to call out an ambulance for a 50-mile journey? Michael, how much do you think in euros?
25.
25 max?
0.
Jenny?
Yeah, like 30 euros. Yeah.
100.
Right. Okay.
Really?
I think maybe with the exception of Germany. I can't quite remember. But the France, Sweden, Switzerland, I definitely checked. It's 100 euros just to call out the ambulance for a 50-mile journey.
So what if you haven't got any money?
Yeah, exactly. What do you do if you're a 10-year-old? What do you do if you're a 13-year-old? What if you do if you're a pensioner? What do you do if they're out on the street and they're unconscious? I mean, these are the things that come up in so many of the American documentaries when they bring it up and they go,
5-mile-an-hour head-on collision that knocked her out cold. Paramedics got her out of the car and into an ambulance for a trip to the hospital.
I get a bill from my insurance company telling me that the ambulance ride was not going to be paid for because it wasn't pre-approved. I don't know exactly when I was supposed to pre-approve it, like after I gained consciousness in the car, before I got in the ambulance, or I should have grabbed my cell phone off of the street.
There's also another problem with the insurance. There are another two problems with the insurance. One is pre-existing conditions. So if the insurance company finds out that you didn't complete the document correctly and you had a pre-existing condition, they can refuse to pay the bill. So you could receive a bill for something, And then they say, oh, wait a minute, you had a chest infection 10 years ago. You didn't put that in your insurance report, in your insurance form. We're going to refuse to pay the bill. So you could end up with a bill of $150,000, even though you are covered. And then there's the other problem is the insurance is like car insurance. With car insurance, you can decide, do I cover for the windscreen? Do I cover for hail? Well, you don't really do it in the UK, but here in Italy, they have hail insurance. Do you cover for if somebody hits your car or you hit somebody else's car? All sorts of things you can put on the insurance. The same in the US. Do you want to cover for cancer? Do you want to cover for this? Do you want to cover? It's insane. And this is what the Tories want to go to, because they will be okay.
That's the thing, isn't it? I bet you'll have a nice fat insurance scheme for working in the House of Parliament that'll last for life, won't they?
But privatisation seems to me to be the absolute worst option, because what will happen is they'll sell off the NHS the same way they sold the water and the gas, electricity and the trains. Sell it off, got a great chunk of money, which they'll spend, and that'll be gone.
But the trains are going well, Michael, aren't they?
The trains?
The best in Europe, no?
Yeah, everything's the best in Europe, Mark. You know that.
And the water, apart from Scotland,
disposal. That's terrific.
Our water's fine, thank you very much.
Sorry, this is just something I have to throw in because this has really pissed me off. Is when you hear Mick Lynch. I'm sorry, Mick Lynch, if you're watching this, but Jenny, is Scottish Water privatised? It's publicly owned. When was it publicly owned? When the UK was a member of the EU? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't become public.
Publicly owned Scottish Water isn't a new thing. It's been that way for.
No, because some people are saying you need to be outside the EU in order to nationalise stuff, but that's not.
The main argument against privatisation, regardless, is that private companies are always going to be profit driven. They're not going to want to put money into investing in the infrastructure and in the services. They're not going to want to fund a thing. They're going to just want to reap the profits from a thing, and that's never good for business. That's never good, especially when we're talking about necessary public services. And someone was asking, well, what services would you think should be exempt from privatization? And it's any service that's of necessity to society. Transportation, health, education are your three main. Do not fucking privatize these things, because these are things we actually need to fund. These are things that cannot be profit driven.
But what is worst of all is that when these were privatized, there were no limits as to who could own, and so the majority, literally the majority of water, electricity, gas, and railways are owned by foreigners.
Yes.
Now, if I'm an investment fund in California, what the hell do I care about whether the water's being chucked in the rivers or? All I'm interested in is the minimum expense and maximum profit. That's all I've done it for.
Legally, you have
to have sold out our vital, as Jenny says, vital utilities to foreigners who have no vested interest in the country. Just look at the bottom line. It's absolutely crazy.
Well, was there not a period in our recent history where Virgin was denied? They put in a bid for an NHS contract that was to do with childcare or childcare services of some kind. They lost out on that bid, and then the government reimbursed them because they lost out on the bid.
Really?
Yeah, Virgin sued the government on the basis that they felt like that contract should have gone to them, and then they won the case and actually managed to sue over not getting a contract they felt they deserved.
That's a bit like the railway companies being compensated for the strike days, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's you win, we lose.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of money, Richard Sharp and Boris. There's another story. God, it doesn't end, does it? Michael, what are your thoughts on that lovely loan?
I'm sure it's all above board. I mean, the fact that the three of them met at Chequers and that's this loan. I mean, obviously Boris was a little bit hard up, as he's perfectly reasonable. He might want a bit of money to tide him over. No, it seems perfectly right to me. I can't see any problem.
Boris is suffering the cost of living crisis just as much as anyone else.
I know.
Apparently.
800 in the hole.
Yeah.
How to do that? What is it? Has anyone ascertained what it's for? What was the loan? What was he using that 800?
Living expenses, as far as I know.
But was it not after that? Was it not after Richard Sharp was put in charge? So he lent the money, he got put in charge of the BBC, and then thereafter, were the Tories not lambasting the BBC for being biased against them?
Yeah.
When they had literally implemented their own guy in charge, they're coming out going, "Oh no, the BBC are now biased against us, and they're not telling everybody how great we are, and screw them." And is that why you put the guy in the job? Yeah.
They've got real hatred for anything that they deem socialist. I'm surprised they haven't started talking about the army, the fire service, and the police force and privatising that. It's not like that hasn't happened in the past.
That's coming.
The private police force. There's I think it's Bethnal Green, or it's in between Bethnal Green and Hackney. There is a community group that have gathered money together to hire in a private security firm to patrol the streets because the police just can't deal with it.
They have that in South Africa, all over the place in South Africa. It's all private security companies that
if you commit a burglary,
deal with the crime, you know.
If you commit a burglary now, the chance of you ending up in court are 5%. So it's a pretty good. I mean, this is another thing we should all be concerned about because the economy is doing so badly, because we're all getting poor and everybody's being squeezed. I mean, crime is such an easy option. It's the chances of getting caught are virtually none.
Seems like it, doesn't it?
It does.
Unless, of course, you attack an MP verbally.
Well, yeah.
In which case, I mean, have you seen the footage?
No.
Matt Hancock.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
But look. I think if people want to hold these people to account, there are better ways of doing this than shoving him on the train. You know, I actually almost felt sorry for Matt Hancock. It was quite intimidating. Almost. I don't know. I'm joking, but no, it would be a scary situation because, especially with COVID, there's a lot of strange people out there. I don't know what the motivation this guy had. He was talking about you kill loads of people, but I don't know if it was because of he was talking about COVID or the vaccine or what. But that's the thing.
I thought he was a nut job. I mean, okay, it's not great that he's done this in any way, shape, or form, but I thought he was like a conspiracy theorist because I heard him talking about what was the drug that Trump was trying to sell that he'd clearly been told by a private company to hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah,
Domestos.
Now that's the one you inject.
There was hydroxychloroquine or something.
Yes,
horse tranquilizer or
wasn't
something.
it? Like
ketamine. Was
it in the quiz?
Wasn't it ketamine? But you know, like.
But it
could have been worse.
It sounded a bit more nuanced, like because I initially thought, oh, he's a conspiracy theorist, but it sounded like he was, and you know, people in the chat can try and correct this. Sounded like he was talking about the trials that were given to people for hydroxychloroquine, which killed people, which hasn't been in the news. Oh, that's the claim that he was making. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But it seemed like such an odd. Do you know what I mean? I was expecting if it was going to be a proper thing, it'd be like, oh, and he did say it. You locked us in our house and you made us take the vaccine. But it didn't sound like he was complaining about the vaccine. He was complaining about the trials. And I was like, that's really weird. What rabbit hole have you gone down to choose that instead of the vaccine itself as being the issue? But he didn't. And again, please correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. I don't think I heard him actually say the vaccine was the issue. It's being locked in your house. And the reason I can say that is because he said, you locked us in the house, even though there were drugs available that could mitigate the effects, plus there was the vaccine. And I think he was even attacking him for being so slow on getting the vaccine out.
Yeah, maybe he went down the same rabbit hole as that Tory MP. What's his name?
Oh,
Andrew Bridgend.
Yeah,
that's right. Yes. I was going to say I don't know how Newsnight managed without Andrew Bridgend. I mean, one time he was on every week. It used to be Peter Bone as well. He was the other one, but I haven't seen either of them lately.
Yeah, they've all gone a bit hush hush. Well, I assume a lot of them are now plotting their next career. I mean, Rees Moggs jumped onto GB News.
Yes,
that's exciting TV, isn't it?
And 30p Lee.
Yeah. Well, he's been caught assaulting people, hasn't he? Because he punched.
It's like you're benefiting from them.
It's a new year.
Happy New Year.
But you've not got a new job yet, have
You're
you?
still
Same old job. You're still a parasite, you're still a scrounger, and you're still a malignant.
Nice people
to say the same environment, isn't it?
Get off. Get off. Get off.
He took Steve Bray's hat. That was what it was all about. And then he said he'd fight him in a boxing match.
I really hope that happens, which means everything's technically legal, and then all Steve does is just kick him in the nuts, and then just totally cheats, and it's totally legal. And
I wouldn't put much money on
just
Steve.
not to be expecting that. The match would be over, and Bray would have been victorious. I mean, it just seems like an ingenious way of dealing with the situation. Not that I advocate, anything else, but I thought that'd be quite a funny thing to how to deal with him. But I think there's another clip of him actually hitting someone's camera out of their hand.
Tory lies cost people's lives. 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 Got anything to say for yourself?
Really?
Yeah, but no charges have been done. But it's funny that with Hancock, it's almost immediate arrest. The guy was saying, as he was being threatened with arrest, he was really looking forward to it because he wanted his day in court against Matt Hancock. And I'm just like,
he'd be a hero for these strange people. Can we segue, because I think we're running a bit low on time, to what happened in Scotland recently with the gender reform bill?
Well, people up here, specifically Alba supporters, seem to have an issue with the new GRA reform bill on the back of having an issue with the Equalities Act of 2010. So everything that they've said they have a problem with is based in the Equalities Act already of 2010. This new GRA reform actually changes nothing to do with that act. It really just makes it a wee bit easier for those looking to transition to obtain gender recognition certificates, which mean that they can get married and under their their choice of gender, that they can after death they will be denoted as their chosen gender, etc. It's really just to make life easier for a very small percentage of the population, and yet so many people who probably don't know and have never encountered a transgender person in their life have all of these issues. But again, all the issues that they keep coming out with seem to just be issues that already existed due to the 2010 Equalities Act. So what it's done in Scotland is really strange, because the anti-trans rhetoric and the anti-GRA rhetoric stems from right-wing politics. And we're seeing it a lot from the Tories, we're seeing it a lot across the water from the Republicans. And yet the people that have bought into it in Scotland seem to be mainly left-wing, progressive, pro-self-determination folk who are then acting against their own interests due to this. So they see this as being an SNP-led thing, an SNP failure, when it was 6 years of deliberation and cross-partisan. The only party that didn't really take part in voting for it were the Tories, showing that it's right-wing rhetoric that's against it. And these Alba supporters will now loudly talk about whenever there's a vote coming up, whether it's a council election or a general election, they'll talk about either not going out to vote at all, or they'll go out and ruin their ballots should there not be an Alba candidate standing. Alba have never won an election. There are a couple, I think, of Alba MPs at Westminster, but that's because they were voted in on an SNP ticket and then defected to Alba after being voted in. So there haven't been any voted in on an Alba ticket. And what do people get like when they keep losing and they don't feel like their voice is being heard? They get militant. They also don't care about what they see to be the other pro-Indy factions, how their actions make the others look. They don't care if it makes the SNP look bad. They don't care if it makes the Greens look bad, because they see the SNP and the Greens as the root of the problem, because they've been proponents of the GRA bill.
But
people seem so strongly against.
So, would you say if there was a choice these people had, these Alba supporters, if it came to supporting gender issues or the becoming an independent country, they would have a difficult choice, or would they be like?
Yeah, they purport to be pro self-determination, but they'll not vote in a way that leads to that goal unless Alba is an option for them. They have no interest in voting for the Greens or the SNP, despite that being really their only vehicle at the moment.
Does the Alba Party have an official line on this bill?
They're just against it. They say their claim is that they're standing up for women's rights. Women's rights are not affected by this bill. Again, their issues are issues that already extend from the Equalities Act of 2010. The Equalities Act of 2010 allows someone who identifies as female to use a women's bathroom. It allows someone who identifies as male to use a male bathroom. It allows these people to purport and carry themselves as the gender they've chosen. This GRA reform does not amend that at all or make it any easier. All it does is allow them to get a bit of paper a little bit easier.
There was sorry, just to interrupt you for a second. There was this big story about a rapist going into a women's prison.
He's not.
No, I know.
Nicola Sturgeon has addressed this in Holyrood. He's not being sent to Cortonville. He is in segregation at Cortonville, so he's not even in with the general population. He says that he's female now. That's fine. If he wants to class himself as female, he can class himself as female, but he's also a rapist, and he was a rapist when he identified as male. So he's not going to be housed with female inmates. At the moment, he's in Cortonvale, and he's in segregation, and he's likely going to be moved to a different prison. We don't know where as yet.
Yeah, no. The point I wanted to say was that this has it's up to the discretion of the prison. This isn't something being pushed through by the government. So the narrative in England seems to be this is the SNP trying to force this person into a women's prison, and against the will of the population, when in reality it's the discretion, and it really upset me. I did a response video to it, but it really upset me because you had David Blunkett, former Home Secretary, on the BBC saying this is a disgrace. It was correct that the Tories vetoed this using the Section 35. That it was necessary because of people like this going into the prison, and he should know. That's what really upset me.
Well, Alex will know that it's always been down to the sporting authorities whether they allow like female to male or male to female transgender folk into sports. It's fuck all to do with the governments. Like, it's the sporting authorities, the governing bodies that decide that. Nobody else.
Yeah, 100%. It doesn't. I looked at both sides of the coin on this. I haven't seen the government's full response as to why they seem to be rejecting it. But from what I've seen of what Scotland wants to change, it's only changing the age and stopping you from having a psychiatric evaluation as to whether or not you really have decided to change your gender.
Yeah,
which seems imagine if you had to do that if you came out as gay. You couldn't come out as gay unless you had a psychological evaluation.
No, it's more simple than that. Let's go to something that a lot of people know about: plastic surgery. So you want a nose job, you want a boob job, you want your ass sucked out, your fat sucked out your ass. You're going to have to go through 3 years of therapy before you're allowed to do that, because I can tell you the regret rate for varying plastic surgeries is so much higher than it has ever been with the transgendered community. There's a very low regret rate within the transgendered community, those that have undergone full transition. And yet, there's so many treatments that the transgender community have to fight for that are given to non-transgendered folk for other health reasons without therapy and without jumping through any hoops. Hormone treatments and what have you can be got if you need that for a medical reason, but not if it's because you want to transition, you have to go through your 3 years of therapy in order. It's all nonsense.
Is it just me? I mean, so this bill came out in 2017, and it's literally at the last minute. They got cross-party support for this. Conservatives up in Scotland backed this. So it's the English Conservatives that have gone against it seems, and Douglas Ross, who I don't know where he really stands. Well, I think we can guess.
He just wants his arm in.
There's fair enough. The thing, I'm not a fan of him. I don't think anyone of us
is.
Not even him.
Supporters aren't a fan of that arsehole.
I will say this: it very much feels like they're once again stamping their authority on the Scots.
Yeah.
And it very much feels like they're using it more than anything else as some form of distraction from all the other stuff. But I'm almost like, you don't have to. If you gave it another day, some other story would come up and distract from the previous crap that you've all created, because that seems to always happen. So I'm quite concerned that they're picking an extra fight. And as you said, it looks like it's becoming quite militant. That guy on the train that confronted Matt Hancock we just discussed, that's anger coming out. And I'm going, I can see this just escalating because everything they're doing right now doesn't seem to be resolving anything. I'm also aware that we've only got 3 minutes left. So, Michael, is there any thoughts from you on any of this, from the GRA to the Scottish Independents to the Tory party?
Not really. I'm not in any way qualified to talk about GRA. As far as Scotland's concerned, neither. Also, so no, I won't waste our time by waffling.
You're allowed to have an opinion on it, if not be an authority on the thing.
Yes, true. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, as far as Scotland's independence is concerned, obviously Scotland should become independent because everybody wants it, or at least the majority want it. But whether it will ever happen or not, I don't know. But,
Michael, do you find it ironic that you have Brexiteers telling Scotland, no, you're not allowed to do this?
Yes.
If it had been Europe saying, no, you're not allowed to do this, they wouldn't be too happy about that.
I just don't see how you can argue against that. It was just.
Well, the argument there is that the EU is a federal union where countries have autonomy. We are in an incorporated union where Scotland does not have autonomy within its union. So,
I don't think any of them do, because Bermuda just tried to pass a bill for legalization of marijuana, and the government stepped in and blocked it, and that wasn't well reported. I had to find that in the Washington Post. Like, that was not reported over here, but you're going, right, so you've stamped on Northern Ireland, you've stamped on Gibraltar, you've stamped on Bermuda, you've stamped on Scotland. I mean, this is worse than the EU. I mean, they came up with this fantasy of authoritarianism.
But if you think about these unions with Westminster as marriages, as relationships, and then consider them abusive relationships, what does an abusive partner do? He wants to constantly stamp his control at every turn, and that's what they're doing. They're wanting to reassert that control and make sure that the countries don't forget who they answer to.
Yeah, things are nuts. Poor Scotland being told what to do by a group of people that don't like being told what to do by another group of people.
Alex, we've had it for 315 years. We're no longer surprised.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming on today.
Thank you so much. And on that note,
bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.